The sun shone bright over Oak Ridge that Tuesday afternoon. The small town was having one of those perfect spring days. Not too hot, not too cold. Birds chirped in the trees, and kids laughed at the playground. It was the kind of day that made people forget their troubles. Tom Chen had just wrapped up his morning meetings at the police station. At 38, he was the youngest police chief in Oak Ridge history. The guys at the station sometimes joked about his baby face, but nobody questioned his skills. Tom had grown up in Oak Ridge, gone away to the police academy, worked his way up in a bigger city, and then come home when the chief position opened up. The town council had taken a chance on him, and so far, it was paying off. "Hey, Chief, don't forget about the budget meeting at 2, his secretary called, as Tom grabbed his coffee. "Thanks, Lisa, it's in my calendar," Tom replied with a smile. Budget meetings were the worst part of the job, but necessary. He glanced at his watch. He had time for a quick lunch before diving into spreadsheets all afternoon. Across town, at Sycamore Park, Tom's mother, Rose, was enjoying her daily routine. At 67, Rose had been retired from teaching for 5 years now. After spending 4 decades shaping young minds at Oak Ridge Elementary, she'd earned her peaceful afternoons. Most days you could find her sitting on the green bench by the duck pond, tossing breadcrumbs to her feathered friends. "Hello there, Mr. Waddles," Rose said to a particularly fat mallard that waddled up for his share. The regulars at the park knew Rose by sight, the petite Asian woman with salt and pepper, hair always wearing colorful scarves. Old Mr. Jenkins tipped his hat as he passed by with his retriever. "Beautiful day, Rose." "Couldn't ask for better," she called back. This was her happy place. Simple pleasures. No stress. That's when she noticed the woman marching toward her. Even from a distance, Rose could tell she meant business. Her heels clicked aggressively on the path, designer sunglasses perched on her nose, blonde hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. Patricia Wilson was new to town, or rather, new to power. She'd moved into the fancy Sycamore Heights development 2 years ago, and had recently been elected president of their homeowners association. People already had strong opinions about Patricia. Some said she was improving property values. Others used less flattering terms. "Excuse me," Patricia said, her voice sharp enough to scatter the ducks. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" Rose looked up, surprised. "Just feeding the ducks, dear. I come here every day." Patricia's lips thinned to a line. "That's exactly the problem. Do you have any idea what bread does to waterfowl? And the mess it creates? The HOA board has received numerous complaints about people like you." "People like me?" Rose raised an eyebrow. She'd dealt with difficult parents during her teaching. Years. This woman didn't scare her. "Bird feeders," Patricia clarified, though her tone suggested otherwise. "Sycamore Heights has strict rules about wildlife management. No feeding allowed." An older gentleman on a nearby bench cleared his throat. "Ma'am, this is a public park. The HOA doesn't make rules here." Patricia shot him a look that could freeze lava. "This park borders our community, and the mess from these birds affects our properties. Section 5, paragraph 3 of our bylaws clearly states—" "I don't mean to be rude," Rose interrupted gently, "but your HOA rules don't apply to public property. The city council actually voted last year to allow duck feeding with proper food." She reached into her bag. "See? I bring special duck feed, not bread. The park ranger gave it to me." Several people watching the exchange nodded. Rose was right. Patricia's face flushed. People were staring now. A teenage boy had even stopped skateboarding to watch. "I don't care what you think you know," Patricia snapped. "As HOA president, I have a responsibility to maintain standards. You need to leave now." Rose didn't budge. "I'm sorry you're upset, but I'm not breaking any rules. Perhaps you could join me? The ducks are quite friendly once you—" "I said leave." Patricia grabbed Rose's arm, yanking her up from the bench. Rose, caught completely off guard, lost her balance. Time seemed to slow down. Her free hand reached out, grasping at air. Her feet tangled. Then she was falling, down the 3 concrete steps that led from the bench area to the pond's edge. The sound was awful. Rose hit the ground hard, both arms outstretched to break her fall. Two distinct cracks rang out across the once peaceful park. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then, Rose screamed. The park erupted into action. Mr. Jenkins rushed to Rose's side. A woman with a stroller called 911. The skateboarding teen ran to get the park ranger. Through tears of pain, Rose could see her arms bent at unnatural angles. The world spun around her. Somewhere above, she heard Patricia's voice, still angry. Still justifying. She was resisting. I merely escorted her and she fell. That's not my fault. Do you know who I am? Mr. Jenkins stood up, furious. Lady, do you know who she is? That's Rose Chen. Her son is the police chief. For the first time, Patricia fell silent. As Rose lay there, focusing on her breathing like they taught in her yoga class, trying not to pass out from the pain, she thought about Tom, her boy. Always so protective, always so fair. What would he do when he found out? In the distance, sirens wailed. Help was coming. Rose didn't know it yet, but her peaceful afternoon at the park had just set in motion a chain of events that would shake Oak Ridge to its core, and Patricia Wilson, standing there straightening her designer jacket while pretending not to panic, had no idea that her worst nightmare was about to come true. A nightmare named Chief Tom Chen. Tom sat at the conference table trying to focus on the spreadsheets in front of him. The budget meeting had been going for 45 minutes and the finance director was droning on about quarterly projections. Around him, department heads nodded along, some taking notes, others clearly daydreaming. If we allocate an additional 3% to equipment maintenance, one the finance director was saying, we'll need to reduce spending in. Tom felt his phone vibrate in his pocket. He normally ignored calls during meetings, but seeing it was from dispatch, he frowned. They knew not to interrupt unless it was important. Excuse me, he said, standing up. I need to take this. He stepped into the hallway, pressing the phone to his ear. Chief Chen. The dispatcher's voice was steady, professional. They were trained that way. But Tom had worked with Brenda long enough to hear the concern underneath. Chief, there's been an incident at Sycamore Park. Your mother's been injured. Tom's heart skipped a beat. What happened? Is she okay? Ambulance is on the way. Officer Patel is first on scene and reports a possible assault. Your mom has injuries to both arms. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Assault? Who? Witness. Reports indicate a woman pushed her down some steps. Officer Patel has detained the suspect. Tom was already moving, his feet carrying him down the hallway on autopilot. Tell Patel I'm on my way. ETA 7 minutes. He stuck his head back into the conference room. Family emergency. Deputy Chief Lopez, take over. Before anyone could ask questions, he was gone. The drive to Sycamore Park was the longest 7 minutes of Tom's life. His brain kept bouncing between professional assessment and personal panic. His mom. Hurt. Pushed. He gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white, forcing himself to obey traffic laws when every instinct screamed at him to flip on the sirens and floor it. Mom was tough, he told himself. A tiny woman who'd raised him alone after Dad died, who'd faced down generations of unruly fifth graders without breaking a sweat. She'd be fine. She had to be fine. The park came into view. Red and blue lights flashed at the entrance. Tom pulled in beside the ambulance, flashing his badge at the officer directing traffic. People stood in small clusters watching. Some had phones out. Great. This would be all over town by dinner. Tom spotted the ambulance near the duck pond and jogged over, his heart in his throat. The paramedics were carefully loading his mother onto a stretcher. Her arms were immobilized. In temporary splints, her face pale beneath her usually warm brown skin. Mom, he said, his voice cracking despite his efforts to stay professional. Rose looked up, her eyes glassy with pain. When she saw Tom, she tried to smile. Tommy, you didn't need to come. Are you kidding me right now? He moved closer, careful, not to jostle the stretcher. The paramedic, a young woman named Aisha, who Tom knew from community events, spoke up. Both arms appear fractured, Chief. We've given her something for the pain, but she'll need x-rays and likely surgery. Tom nodded, trying to process. You're in good hands, Mom. I'll meet you at the hospital soon. Rose's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry about your meeting. Mom, stop. Just let them take care of you, okay? He squeezed her shoulder gently, the only place he dared touch. As the paramedics prepared to load the stretcher into the ambulance, Officer Patel approached Tom. Priya Patel was relatively new to the force but sharp as a tack. The grim expression on her usually cheerful face told Tom all he needed to know. Sir, she said quietly, the suspect is still on scene. Multiple witnesses confirm she grabbed your mother's arm and pulled her, causing the fall. Tom took a deep breath. Show me. Officer Patel led him to where another officer stood with a blonde woman, Patricia Wilson. Tom recognized her from town council meetings where she'd shown up to complain about everything from parking regulations to noise ordinances. Always immaculately dressed, always demanding special treatment for the Sycamore Heights community. Right, now she was gesturing emphatically, her designer outfit somehow still pristine despite the chaos around her. This is ridiculous, she was saying to Officer Taylor. You can't detain me. Do you have any idea who my husband is? Ma'am, please lower your voice, Officer Taylor said, looking relieved to see Tom approaching. Patricia turned, spotting Tom. She immediately straightened, putting on what he assumed was her talk-to-the-manager face. Finally, someone in charge, she said. Officer, I want to file a complaint against that woman for creating a public disturbance. She was violating our HOA's rules about wildlife, feeding, and when I asked her to leave, she became belligerent. Tom stared at her, momentarily speechless. Was she serious? Did she not understand what she'd done? Ma'am, he said slowly, finding his professional voice. I'm Police Chief Tom Chen. Yes, I know who you are, Patricia said impatiently. We met at the mayor's fundraiser last month. Now about my complaint. The woman you pushed, Tom continued evenly, is Rose Chen, my mother. For the first time, Patricia faltered. Her perfectly lipsticked mouth opened, then closed. I didn't push anyone. She fell when I was escorting her out. Mr. Jenkins, the old man who walked his retriever in the park every day, stepped forward from the small crowd of onlookers. That's a load of baloney. We all saw you grab her arm and yank her up. You assaulted her. Others in the crowd nodded and murmured agreement. I did no such thing. Patricia's voice rose. She was breaking the rules. Our HOA bylaws clearly state, this is a city park. Tom cut in, his voice dangerously quiet. HOA bylaws have no jurisdiction here. Well, I didn't know that, Patricia sniffed, and regardless, I barely touched her. If she fell, it's because she's elderly and unsteady. That's hardly my fault. Tom felt a wave of anger so intense it momentarily blinded him. He wanted nothing more than to slap handcuffs on this woman and throw her in the back of a squad car. But even through his fury, he knew he needed to do this by the book. This was his mother. There could be no procedural mistakes, nothing a lawyer could use later. Officer Patel, he said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. Please, inform Ms. Wilson of her rights and take her statement down at the station. I'll be there shortly after I check on my mother at the hospital. Patricia's face drained of color as the reality of her situation finally seemed to sink in. You're arresting me for an accident? We're detaining you while we investigate an assault, Tom corrected her. Officer Patel will explain the process. As Patel led a protesting Patricia away, Tom turned back toward the ambulance where his mother was now loaded inside. He had a job to do, 2 jobs actually, be a good son and be a good police chief. Right now, those 2 duties were pulling him in opposite directions, creating the most difficult challenge of his career. What Patricia Wilson didn't know was that she had just made an enemy of the one person in town with both the motivation and the authority to make her pay for what she'd done. And Tom Chen always ensured justice was served, one way or another. Tom sat in the hospital waiting room, his badge heavy in his pocket. The surgery to set his mom's bones had been going for over an hour, The doctor had explained that both arms had suffered compound fractures. The bones had actually broken through the skin. At Rose's age, recovery would be slow and painful. "Chief?" Tom looked up to see Deputy Chief Lopez standing in the doorway, concern etched on his face. Alex Lopez had been Tom's friend since high school. They'd joined the force together before Tom left for the big city. When Tom returned as chief, making Alex his deputy had been his first decision. "Hey," Tom said, his voice rough from the coffee he'd been downing. "Any updates?" Alex sat beside him, handing over a fresh cup. "Witness statements are consistent. The Wilson woman grabbed your mom's arm with enough force to pull her off the bench. Multiple people confirm your mom warned her she had no authority. In a public park before the assault." Tom's jaw tightened. "And Wilson's statement? Claims it was an accident. Says your mom was argumentative and lost her balance when being escorted from the bench." Alex's tone made clear what he thought of that version. "We've got her cooling her heels at the station. Her husband's lawyer showed up about 20 minutes ago." Of course he had. Brad Wilson was some hotshot real estate developer. They'd moved to town 3 years ago and immediately started throwing their weight around, bulldozing old buildings for luxury condos nobody local could afford. Tom rubbed his temples. "This is a mess, Alex. I'm too close to this case." "We all are. Rose taught half the department in elementary school, including me. Remember when she brought cupcakes to the station on your first day as chief?" Tom smiled despite himself. His mother had been so proud. She'd worn her best dress and brought homemade cupcakes with little badges made of fondant. The guys still teased him about it, but good-naturedly. "I need to recuse myself officially," Tom said. "You'll have to lead." "The investigation?" Alex nodded. "Already started the paperwork. But Tom, you should know, the Wilsons are connected. The mayor's wife plays tennis with Patricia. Judge Holbrook bought one of their properties last year." "Are you saying they'll try to make this go away?" "I'm saying prepare for pressure." Alex hesitated. "There's something else. A kid at the park recorded the whole thing on his phone. It's not good, Tom. You can hear the bones break." Tom's stomach lurched. "Has it gone online?" "Not yet. The kid's mom brought him to the station to give a statement, and Officer Patel convinced them to hold off posting it while we investigate. But it's evidence, and it's damning." The waiting room door opened and Dr. Negyan appeared, still in surgical scrubs. Tom stood immediately. "The surgery went well," the doctor said. "Both fractures have been set and pinned. She's in recovery now." "When can I see her?" "She'll be groggy, but you can go in soon." "Chief Chen," Dr. Nguyen's voice softened. "Your mother will need significant help during recovery. Both arms are in casts. She won't be able to dress herself, prepare food, or handle basic hygiene without assistance for at least 6 weeks. The reality of what that meant hit Tom like a punch to the gut. His mom's independence, gone. And all because some entitled woman thought she owned a public park. "I'll take care of her," Tom said firmly. Dr. Nguyen nodded. "A nurse will come get you when she's ready for visitors." After the doctor left, Tom turned to Alex. "I need to see the video." "You sure that's a good idea?" "Probably not. Show me anyway." Alex pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then handed it over. The video was shaky at first, clearly shot by a teenager who hadn't expected to capture anything important. It showed the park bench, Rose sitting peacefully, Patricia Wilson entering the frame, her body language aggressive from the start. Tom watched his mother's polite responses, her gentle explanation about the park rules. He saw Patricia's anger escalate, heard her voice rise. Then, the moment. Patricia grabbing his mom's arm, yanking hard. Rose's surprise, her small body tipping forward, tumbling down the concrete steps. The crack was audible. So was his mother's scream. The phone fell as the kid presumably ran to help, but the audio continued. Patricia's voice, still angry, still self-righteous even as people shouted at her to back off, to look what she'd done. Tom handed the phone back, his hand shaking slightly. "Have Patel get a copy for evidence?" "Already done." "Tom." Alex looked at his friend with concern. "You need to let us handle this by the book." "I know." Tom stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the hospital parking lot. But if I were just her son and not the chief, I'd be hunting that woman down right now. That's exactly why you need to step back. We'll get justice for Rose, I promise. A nurse appeared at the door. Chief Chen, your mother's asking for you. Tom followed the nurse down the sterile hallway to the recovery area. The antiseptic smell reminded him of when his dad died. That awful week of hospital, visits before the end. He pushed the memory away as the nurse pulled back a curtain. Rose looked so small in the hospital bed, both arms encased in white casts resting on pillows. Her eyes were half closed, still groggy from anesthesia. An IV dripped fluids and pain, medication into her vein. Mom, Tom said softly, taking the seat beside her bed. Rose's eyes fluttered open. Tommy, she murmured. You didn't have to stay. Wild horses couldn't drag me away. He gently touched her shoulder, afraid to hurt her. How's the pain? The drugs are good, she said with a weak smile. I feel like I'm floating. You need anything? Water? Another blanket? She shook her head slightly. Just tell me you're not going to do something stupid. Tom blinked. Even drugged up after surgery, his mother knew him too well. What do you mean? That woman. Patricia. Rose's eyes focused, suddenly sharp despite the medication. I saw your face at the park. You were ready to throw away your badge to get at her. Mom, she hurt you. Badly. And the law will deal with her. Not you personally. Rose tried to lift one casted arm, winced, and settled back. Promise me you'll handle this right, Tommy. Do your job the way I taught you, with integrity. Tom felt a lump in his throat. His mother had raised him to believe in justice and doing things the right way. Even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. I promise, he said finally. I'll let Lopez run the investigation. Everything by the book. Rose nodded, satisfied. Good. That's my boy. She drifted off to sleep, the medication pulling her under. Tom sat watching her breathe, his mind racing between his promise and his anger, between his duty as police chief and his instinct as a son. Outside in the hallway, his phone buzzed. A text from Alex. Wilson lawyer demanding immediate release. No charges filed yet. Need your input on next steps. The moment of truth had arrived sooner than he'd expected. Tom looked at his sleeping mother, then down at his badge. He would keep his promise. But Patricia Wilson would learn that justice, when properly served, could be more terrifying than any act of vengeance. 2 weeks passed in a blur of hospital visits, paperwork, and sleepless nights. Tom had moved temporarily into his mother's small house, sleeping on the couch to be near if she needed anything during the night. His own apartment sat empty except for when he swung by to grab fresh clothes. Tommy, you're hovering again, Rose said from her recliner. She'd been home from the hospital for 5 days now, both arms still in casts. Her living room had been transformed into a makeshift bedroom since she couldn't manage the stairs. I'm not hovering. I'm strategically positioned for maximum assistance. Tom adjusted her pillows for the 3rd time that hour. Rose sighed. Go to work, I'll be fine. Mrs. Patel is coming to help me with lunch. Officer Patel's mother had volunteered to help care for Rose, part of the unofficial support network that had sprung up around town. Teachers from Rose's old school brought casseroles. Former students, now adults with kids of their own, stopped by to read to her or just chat. The community had rallied around its beloved retired teacher. Fine, but call me if you need anything at all. Tom kissed her forehead. What I need is for you to stop treating me like I'm made of glass, Rose said, but her eyes were kind. And maybe bring home some of those almond cookies from Wong's bakery on your way back. Tom grinned. Now that I can do. At the station, Tom found Alex waiting in his office, a thick folder in hand. Please tell me that's good news, Tom said, settling behind his desk. Depends on your definition of good. Alex dropped the folder on the desk. District Attorney Amy Rivera wants to meet with you. She's reviewed our evidence and is ready to file charges. Tom flipped open the folder. Aggravated assault? Aggravated assault against an elderly person, Alex corrected. It's a more serious charge given your mom's age. The video sealed it. Plus, we have 17 witness statements, all consistent. Tom leaned back in his chair. And what's Patricia Wilson saying now? Her tune's changed. Her lawyer's pushing for a plea deal, claiming she never intended harm, and it was an unfortunate accident. Alex's voice dripped with skepticism. Oh, and get this, the Sycamore Heights HOA board called an emergency meeting yesterday. They voted to remove her as president. Seriously? That's unexpected. Turns out nobody liked her much anyway, and once the story got around town about what she did to Rose, well, Alex shrugged. Even rich people have limits to what they'll tolerate. Several homeowners have come forward with complaints about her bullying tactics. The board apologized to your mom in an official letter. Tom hadn't seen that coming. Public opinion had swung hard against Patricia Wilson. The local paper had run the story on the front page, tactfully not mentioning the video, but describing the incident in detail. Social media had exploded with support for Ms. Chen, our favorite teacher, and condemnation for the HOA tyrant. What time does Rivera want to meet? Tom asked. She's coming here at 11. And Tom, Alex hesitated. She's bringing Wilson's lawyer. They want to discuss the plea deal. Tom checked his watch. 9:30. Okay, I've got some paperwork to catch. Up on first. Been a little distracted lately. Alex hesitated at the door. You know you don't have to be in the meeting. I can handle it. No, Tom said firmly. I need to be there. Mom made me promise to do this right, and I will. For the next hour, Tom forced himself to focus on routine police business, budget requests, shift schedules, a report about traffic, patterns around the new shopping center. Normal, mundane things that had nothing to do with his mother's broken arms or Patricia Wilson's smug face. At precisely 11, his phone buzzed. Dia Rivera is here with Mr. Goldstein, his secretary announced. Tom stood, straightened his uniform, and took a deep breath. This was the test. Could he handle this professionally, or would his personal feelings get in the way? Amy Rivera entered first, a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 40s who'd been DA for the past 6 years. Behind her came Martin Goldstein, the Wilsons' lawyer, an expensively dressed man with a permanent expression of mild disdain. Chief Chen, Rivera nodded. Thanks for meeting with us. Of course. Tom gestured to the chairs opposite his desk. Please sit. Alex slipped in behind them, closing the door quietly. I'll get right to the point, Rivera said. We have enough evidence to pursue felony charges against Patricia Wilson for aggravated assault. Mr. Goldstein has approached me with a plea offer. Goldstein cleared his throat. My client is deeply remorseful about what happened to Ms. Chen. It was never her intention to cause harm. She was simply attempting to enforce what she believed were the rules of the park. Tom kept his face carefully neutral. Rules she had no authority to enforce, in a place she had no jurisdiction. Yes, well, Goldstein adjusted his tie. Mrs. Wilson acknowledges she was mistaken about that. She's willing to plead guilty to a lesser charge of simple assault with the following terms: 6 months probation, 80 hours of community service, and payment of all medical expenses for Ms. Chen. Tom looked at Rivera. And what do you think, counselor? Honestly, I could get a conviction on the felony charge with the evidence we have. The video is damning, but Rivera hesitated. A trial would be hard on your mother. She'd have to testify, relive the experience, and with her current condition, Tom nodded slowly. His mom was tough, but the idea of her having to sit through a trial, face Patricia Wilson across a courtroom, answer questions from lawyers while still in pain from her injuries, it didn't sit right. What if we counter? Tom asked. Guilty to the original charge, but with 6 months in county jail, 500 hours of community service specifically with the Parks Department, full restitution for medical expenses including physical therapy and home care, and a restraining order, keeping her away from my mother in Sycamore Park. Goldstein frowned. That's excessive for what was clearly an accident. 17 witnesses and a video say it wasn't an accident. Alex spoke up from his position by the door. Your client grabbed an elderly woman hard enough to break her balance, and cause her to fall down concrete steps, breaking both arms. She then continued to berate Ms. Chen while she lay injured. My client was understandably upset. "Let's back up," Rivera interrupted. "I think there's room for negotiation here." She turned to Tom. "What if we keep the original charge but reduce the jail time to 3 months, with early release possible after 6 weeks with good behavior? Everything else stays as you proposed." Tom considered. It wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. About ensuring Patricia Wilson understood the severity of what she'd done. About making sure she never did anything like this again. "I need to discuss this with my mother," he said finally. "She's the victim here. Her wishes matter." Rivera nodded. "Of course, we can reconvene tomorrow morning." After they left, Alex looked at Tom with surprise. "You're really going to ask Rose what she wants?" "Mom taught 5th grade for 40 years, Tom said with a small smile. "She knows more about fair punishment than any of us." That evening, Tom sat beside his mother's recliner and explained the situation. As he laid out the options, he watched her face carefully. "What do you think I should do, Mom?" he asked when he finished. Rose was quiet for a moment, her casted arms resting on pillows. "I think you should accept the deal Amy suggested, but with one change." "What's that?" "Add community education to Patricia's sentence. Make her teach a class about public park rules and citizen responsibilities. Maybe then she'll actually learn something from this mess." Tom stared at his mother, then started to laugh. It was the perfect solution. Practical, educational, and just a little bit pointed. Exactly the kind of lesson his mother had always been best at teaching. 6 months later, the early summer sun warmed Rose's back as she sat on her favorite bench at Sycamore Park. The ducks waddled up eagerly, recognizing their friend. With both arms finally free of casts, Rose could once again toss the special duck feed she kept in a small pouch. "Don't crowd, Mr. Waddles," she chuckled as the fattest duck pushed to the front. "There's enough for everyone." Her arms still ached, sometimes, especially when rain was coming. The physical therapist said that was normal and might never completely go away. But Rose had regained most of her mobility, enough to feed her ducks and, most importantly, to live independently again. Tom had finally moved back to his own apartment last month, though he still came for dinner twice a week and called every day. Rose glanced at her watch. It was almost time. Part of her was nervous about today, but another part felt it was necessary. The final step in putting this whole ugly business behind her. Right on schedule, Park Director Lee approached, accompanied by a woman Rose hadn't seen in 6 months, Patricia. Wilson looked different now. Her designer clothes had been replaced with casual pants and a simple blouse. Her hair wasn't as perfectly styled. Most noticeably, the entitled arrogance that had once radiated from her was gone. "Miss Chen," Director Lee said warmly, "Mrs. Wilson is here for her community education session as scheduled. Are you still comfortable with this?" Rose nodded. "Yes, of course. Hello, Patricia." Patricia couldn't quite meet Rose's eyes. "Hello, Ms. Chen. Thank you for agreeing to this." Director Lee patted Rose's shoulder. "I'll be just over by the playground if you need anything." As the director walked away, Patricia hesitantly sat on the far end of the bench, leaving plenty of space between them. The silence stretched uncomfortably. "The ducks look healthy," Patricia finally said. "They are. The park provides special feed stations now." Rose gestured to a small dispenser installed near the pond. "Your class helped make that happen." As part of her sentence, Patricia had indeed been required to teach a community education course about park rules and civic responsibility. To everyone's surprise, she'd thrown herself into the project with unexpected dedication. The 6-week course had resulted in several practical improvements to the park, including the duck feed stations that prevented both overfeeding and the use of unhealthy foods. Patricia nodded, fidgeting with the edge of her blouse. "I've completed all my community service hours now, and the probation ends next week." "That's good." Another uncomfortable silence. Rose sighed. "Patricia, I didn't ask to meet you here to make you squirm. I wanted to talk, person to person, now that the courts and lawyers aren't involved. Patricia finally looked up. I don't know what to say to you. Sorry feels ridiculously inadequate. But it's a start, Rose said gently. Look, what happened was terrible. I won't pretend it wasn't. I spent months in pain, dependent on others for the most basic things. Patricia winced visibly. But, Rose continued, I've had a lot of time to think about that day. And I believe you never intended things to go so far. I didn't, Patricia whispered. But that doesn't excuse what I did. I was awful. Rose nodded, appreciating the honesty. Why? What made you so angry that day? Patricia took a deep breath, looking out at the pond. It sounds so stupid now. Brad, my husband, had just told me he was leaving. 20 years of marriage, and he ended it over breakfast that morning. Said he'd met someone at his gym. She gave a bitter laugh. I came to the park to clear my head, and then I saw you, so peaceful and happy, and something just snapped. Rose hadn't known this. It didn't excuse Patricia's behavior, but it helped explain the irrational fury she'd displayed that day. I took my anger out on you, Patricia continued. I was hurting, so I wanted someone else to hurt too. It was childish and cruel, and I've regretted it every day since. Rose was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small container. Cookie? She offered. I baked them this morning. Patricia looked startled. You're offering me cookies? After everything? Holding on to anger is exhausting, Rose said simply. I've spent 40 years teaching children to move forward after mistakes. I should probably practice what I preached. Hesitantly, Patricia took a cookie. Thank you. Not just for this, but for agreeing not to extend the restraining order. Being banned from the park was harder than I expected. You've changed, Rose observed. I can see it. Patricia nodded slowly. My whole life fell apart after that day. Brad left. I lost my position at the HOA. Neighbors stopped speaking to me. Even my tennis friends dropped me. She paused. At first I was bitter, blaming everyone else. But during my community service, something shifted. I realized how self-centered I'd become, how entitled. A child ran by, laughing, chasing a butterfly. Both women watched silently for a moment. What will you do now? Rose asked. I'm selling the house. Too many bad memories. Plus, I can't afford it on my own anymore. Patricia shrugged. I'm thinking of moving to a smaller place downtown, maybe, volunteering at the community center. I discovered I'm pretty good at organizing events during my service hours. Rose smiled. They always need help with the after-school program. Maybe. Patricia hesitated. Can I ask you something? Why didn't you push for more jail time? Your son told me you specifically requested more community service instead. Prison wouldn't have fixed what was broken in you, Rose said simply. Teaching might, it usually does. From the playground, Director Lee waved, pointing to his watch. I should go, Patricia said, standing. My last community service shift starts soon, helping with the summer reading program at the library. Rose nodded. Good luck with everything, Patricia. As Patricia walked away, a familiar voice called from behind. Mom? Rose turned to see Tom approaching, still in his police uniform. His expression was concerned as he watched Patricia's retreating figure. Everything okay? He asked, sitting beside his mother. When you told me you were meeting with her, I thought I should swing by, just in case. Still my protector, Rose said fondly, patting his hand. Everything's fine. We had a good talk. Tom shook his head in amazement. I don't know how you do it after what she did to you. Forgiveness isn't for the other person, Tommy, it's for yourself. Rose tossed the last of the duck feed into the pond. Besides, she's been punished enough. Lost her marriage, her status, her friends. And nearly sent to jail by the police chief who turned out to be the son of the woman she assaulted, Tom added wryly. Talk about karma. Rose laughed. Life has a way of teaching lessons, doesn't it? sometimes through an HOA president, sometimes through a retired school teacher. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the ducks paddle across the pond. The summer breeze rustled through the trees, children played in the distance, and two older women chatted on a nearby bench. The park had returned to normal, peaceful, communal, a place of small joys. "I think I'm going to write a book," Rose announced suddenly. Tom raised an eyebrow. "About what happened?" "No, about teaching. All those years in the classroom, the lessons learned, the lives touched." She smiled at her son. "Including how to raise a boy who becomes the kind of police chief who values justice over revenge." Tom felt a lump in his throat. "I'd read that book." "You'd better," Rose said with a twinkle in her eye. "I expect a glowing review from the chief of police." As they walked slowly toward the park exit, Rose took one last look back at her bench. The place where something terrible had happened had also become the place where healing began. For herself, for Patricia, and in some ways, for the community. Some lessons came at a high price, but as any good teacher knew, the most valuable ones usually did.